Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
In previous real side experiences shared by myself and others, there is an ongoing effort to reformat the overall consciousness that what is effected are far better circumstances for all in the simulator. For indeed, the simulators are the overall consciousnesses, and according to the design of the consciousness, the ideas it comprises of dictates the general state of the simulated creational realms thus effected. The overall consciousness then is the engine room or database by which the multi-dimensional simulated game arenas or stadiums are generated. As each individual is the decider of that which they experience, as it is the ideas, free will generated via the body vehicles, or ideas as created by others that are agreed with, that become a consciousness installed, and then effect their reflective nature, as each individual must take on the overall consciousness program that affects the simulator chosen to operate within, as each simulator participant is then a part of the overall consciousness engine room that affects then the simulator they are participating within, so each individual contribution, in addition to the current overall consciousness program, each individual consciousness created idea or agreement will add to the overall consciousness, and the simulator effected will be altered accordingly. As the secondary personal self is established, so the free will idea creations will be more of a distorted nature, as opposed to when the body forms were directly animated by real awareness, an indifferent objective position, where nothing is additionally applied mind idea-wise to the simulated situations as being experienced through the body forms, but with the formulation of the secondary personal self, where free will is granted, so this nowness indifference to the creation real awareness position is removed from the creation, the consciousness embraced, and as this becomes a permanent situation, the secondary personal self immersed with, the real awareness, everything position forgotten, so the consciousness is embraced in its idea entirety. The distortion of consciousness then, coupled with the inevitable unconsciousness that becomes progressively more so as lifetimes roll on, as each individual no longer is the everything view, but rather a limited position where only access to the current lifetime of memory references, of idea agreements is so, the vaster bulk being the subconscious agreements, the isolated personal self-individual is oblivious of, but still the effects of regardless, so the overall consciousness becomes overburdened, overladen with idea distortion fully embraced, and the simulator effected from it goes through its degradation cycles to inevitable implosion. And according to the general ideas that overall consciousness comprises of, dictates the general layout of simulated circumstance throughout the multi-dimensions of the creational realm, and our simulator is somewhat based on a slave-controller dynamic foundation that expresses in all the various ways it does, endless examples involving many species and their versions of dark force reptilian controllers, of which I have been shown and shared over the years. As everything at its core is based on agreement, this would include the overall state of simulator affairs, the reptilian control and its maintenance, and also the extent of unconsciousness. For as individuals become more aware, so the consciousness of distortion is gradually released. Unconsciousness gives way to conscious and awareness of the ideas that are the overall consciousness, and potentially simulator overall circumstances, the reptilian controlling factor can be re-evaluated. And as the distortion of created ideas are released, as there is indeed a vast wake-up and awareness process embraced on a massive scale in operation at this moment, so this simulator deterioration can be delayed, halted in its tracks, even reversed, all according to the overall consciousness that affects it. And through this vast wake-up are the simulator masses becoming more so in positions, whereas a simulation and experience follows intent, choice and agreement with what makes sense, life and awareness speaking, so facilitated are the means where the overall simulator experience can become more conducive to the awareness process, as opposed to struggle, strife, hardship, and indeed simulator deterioration to eventual implosion. The overall consciousness then is open to being reformatted, restructured, just like we might make positive adjustments to the data files of a computer game that render a better experience for the game players. The guides and those on their awareness processes have the agreement permission to exact such alterations that manifest as more advantageous simulator circumstances for all. For as I said, we can't impact anyone's experience absent of their agreement that we can, but through the creational wake-up and awareness process embraced by ever-increasing volumes of individuals, so we are at liberty to do just this. As I said, this has been an ongoing effort to restructure the overall consciousness, and this real side experience would be along these lines. Absent of the real awareness impressions and discernment of what was taking place wouldn't have been possible with the personal self alone, and the simulated visuals afforded in association with what I and a group were involving ourselves in, for we would be primarily operating on the top floor of a vast multi-layered car park, the top level that is open to the skies. I have experienced such a symbology before, and the representation is of a creation. The levels of the car park would be the dimensional life levels. The top level then, literally speaking, the ethereal, and a top level open to the skies above. As it is the ethereal aspect that is closest to the real awareness, everything isness reality we actually are, the skies above the highest level of the car park the group and I were stationed upon. And indeed, it was the ethereal level then we were directly targeting in regards to the restructuring of the overall consciousness. For indeed, everything begins in the unseen other dimensional areas, and filters through to the densest aspects, and eventually manifests as it will on the physical, and as much by way of subliminal implantation will be through the subconscious then. This was seemingly our objective here. But where the dark forces, subconscious, ethereal contributions will be for controlling purposes, those of the group and myself would be quite the opposite. Visually, this would present as the group and myself transporting vast supplies of bullets across the expanse of this highest life level ethereal position. Bullets or any projectile represents ideas, and should the bullets hit home, so to speak, then the ideas that the projectiles represent have been accepted. Effectively, then, we were distributing bullets on a vast, overall consciousness inserting scale. We were formulating beneficial ideas, and had the permission and agreement as to their application and installation in a consciousness, and even were transporting on an equally vast scale the weapons required for the firing of the bullets. For generally, as the symbology goes, an individual fires the projectile, the idea, utilizing whatever mechanism that this can be so, and the means of projecting the idea can give indication as to the idea's nature also. And in this case, our weapons, that which would fire the idea projectiles, were very advanced and sophisticated. Sometimes on the real side, projectile firing weapons can be very crude or primitive, which can reveal the ideas being created and indeed fired for agreement are of an old and outdated nature, as the representation went then that our weapons were quite the opposite, as though a cutting-edge sci-fi technology. This suggested ideas of a more progressive nature. As I said, this represented the continued effort in regards to a beneficial consciousness overhaul. Our activity in this regard is realized, of course, by the dark forces, who would rather have everything maintained as it currently is, as after all, it is an overall consciousness that suits them, and effect propagates their desired simulator controlling dominion. The dark forces cannot intervene with free will and agreement, just as we can't, but we had the agreement that we could exact the consciousness restructuring. The dark forces then could only attempt to interfere where they were able, where agreements allowed that they could. In this case, the group and I would be proceeding with our idea restructuring, our bullet and advanced weapon distributing throughout the ethereal level, the top floor of the multi-layered car park, and evading and avoiding what appeared to be a large military army intent on preventing us, expressions of the dark forces as impressions revealed. And should they even manage to get somewhat close to interfering with our operation of capturing or killing us and securing our idea bullets and weapons, we would simply teleport from their midst and relocate elsewhere, that our capture and the shutting down of our consciousness reformatting operation wasn't achievable by them. And periodically we would be checking in on an individual that had the appearance of my father, but in actuality, as is rather a constant with real side experiences of mine and others, is that the real guides oftentimes assume the outer forms of parental figures, and impressions would verify this was indeed the case here. The group and I were providing constant progress reports to this guide in regards to our overall consciousness overhaul and reformatting operation, and as I said, despite the dark forces' efforts of disruption, we would neither be deterred or prevented from continuing with it, and ultimately then, through agreement of the simulator masses, we had the afforded permission where we could assist in improving simulator situations for all through the reordering of the very idea foundation files that affect the layout of multi-dimensional creation. In an unrelated following scene, I would be observing what impressions revealed was the Calorm god, the reptilian overlord of the fourth life level. He seemed to be working alongside other very creationally powerful, but also relatively aware beings, seeking what impressions also revealed as a means of sustaining the longevity of his lifespan, as though he was facing the very possibility of it drawing to conclusion. Visually confusing, though the impressions affording clarification, as he and this group of others appeared to be progressing through a series of stages that were rather nonsensical simulation-wise. But should they reach their objective, all would have then a continuation of a body-form existence, as though the group members, including the Calorm, had a situation where their body-form lifespans were drawing to a conclusion. But at one point it was as though the Calorm was betrayed by this group, that despite his vast power and simulator positioning, the capability he had always was more so on the consciousness-developed creational side, and where he lacked awareness that would afford him greater power if utilized in this manner, his group, as I said, seemed to be a combination of creationally powerful beings, but enhanced through the awareness they also possessed. That the group had the awareness to determine this method of body-form longevity, although why this was posing as an issue for them and the practically eternal Calorm wasn't made apparent. As I said, the Calorm was deceived, as though he was required for this succession of stages to be progressed through by the group he was with, but then ditched at a certain point, the group attaining their eternal body-form longevity, and the Calorm would be denied. Perhaps not the wisest choice of action, and that the group may have overestimated their safety assurances in relation to the Calorm, for he would descend into unbridled rage, and vent his ire upon the group that had betrayed him. He would completely destroy them, as though incinerating their forms, and curiously as he did this, his own body form would change. I hadn't determined the body form he was operating as throughout this scene, although the group he was with had appeared human, but now his form became that of a kind of two-legged, bipedal horse, his body that of humanoid, but his head more so a kind of demonic, red-eyed horse design. The scene would fade. I was bearing witness to this curious situation, as though the Callum position was now somewhat compromised or tentative. The impression was in relation specifically to his body form lifespan, as though unable to be perpetuated. That he was seeking assistance in regards to this from the group of creationally powerful, but also rather aware humans, betrayed in the end, and where this group suffered the consequences.